Hi, welcome to Bar Math. Today I'm doing a series of videos on sets and probability. For this question, it says Tanner flips a coin 3 times. Find the appropriate sample space, S, for this experiment. Now we can do the appropriate sample space in 2 ways. One, with only 3 flips of a coin, we could do a tree. We could say on the first flip, it's heads or tails. That's the first flip. On the second flip, it's either heads or tails. Now, when I say heads or tails on the second flip, that's the second flip after the first one being heads, or the second one after the first one being tails. We have to acknowledge that the branches come off of both of them. And for our third flip, if it was heads, heads, the next one is either heads or tails. If it was heads, tails, the next one is either heads or tails. If it is tails, heads, the next one is either heads or tails. And if it's tail, tails, the next one is either heads or tails. Notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 outcomes. Now, I could have done this differently. I could have listed them out, and I don't think listing these out are too hard when it's just 3. I could have heads, heads, heads. Now, I'm going to do the next set where there's 2 heads and 1 tails, and I'm just going to have the tails float amongst the 3 spots. So heads, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, heads. Okay, now I'm going to do the next set where I have 2 tails and 1 heads. So that's heads, tails, tails. That shouldn't be a comma there. So the head is going to float down, tails, heads, tails, and then tails, tails, head, and then the last is all 3 tails. Okay, still 8 outcomes. Now when it asks for us to describe the outcome, it's basically we're putting together the set. Describe the event E, that there are 1 tail and 2 heads. So 1 tail, 2 heads. So that's 1 tail, so 1 tail, 2 heads is this first one, heads, heads, tails. Then heads, tails, heads, then tails, heads, heads. Next, it asks for the event that there are at least 2 heads flipped. Well, we already have 2 heads here, here, and here, so we can start with E. Heads, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, heads. But at least 2 means we also have to include all 3 of them being heads. So where this had 3 outcomes, this one has 4. Last, it says, describe the event G that the first and last coin flip are tails. Okay, well, if the first and last are tails, we have tails, 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 or tails, heads, tails. So this one only has 2 outcomes. All right, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like my Facebook page, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks!